Welcome to the Masters Alliance Uncut, and I am Herb Perez. Today, what an amazing episode we have. I am honored to be joined by one of my seniors and the original USA team captain, Grandmaster John Holloway from Gentle East Martial Arts. He has served in virtually every position in the United States in the organization, from being a top referee, developer of programs, to being the first person to win medals in both the ITF and WTF World Championships. He also served as referee director and head of team for both the Pan Am Games and the Olympic Games. Today he's going to be sharing his thoughts on taekwondo, how we can do better, but more importantly, what the future holds. So strap in. This is going to be a great podcast. Okay, today I'm honored and really overjoyed to have one of my favorite seniors, legacy in the sport that I love, who paved the way for all of us, including me, and gave me the opportunity. And there are some very many personal stories in which he helped me personally that may come up. But he was one of the first USA team captains. In addition to that, he competed both in the ITF and the WTF and won medals in both, and then moved on to great leadership programs that we'll talk about in a bit. But I'd like to welcome Grandmaster John Holloway to the podcast.
Glad to be here, Herbert.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm really just overjoyed that you would join us, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have on. I want to talk a little bit, though, in the beginning about your journey and how you came to be in taekwondo. I mean, what drew you to this sport initially, sir?
Okay, my journey began when I was a kid. As far as hearing about taekwondo, and the name taekwondo was not heard of. It was karate or karate. So there was a kid that had a relative on the street that I lived on in Philadelphia, and he came to visit during the summer. And he came and he started talking about karate, and he was learning it from a cousin or whatever. And I was in awe because I never heard about this stuff. You know, only thing I'd heard about and played was football or run track or whatever it may be. But he was saying karate, and it was like, uh-oh, this is that crazy stuff, that deadly stuff. And from that, I got the impression that you do karate, you're going to get your teeth knocked out. You got to break your knuckles because you got to go through madness. I found out later that was not the case, but that's where it started. So when I graduated from high school, went to St. Tommy Moore in Philly, we would go up to George's Hill and they'd be playing the congas, playing the drums, and over in the grass were two white belts. They had on white belts, and they were sparring. And I'm looking, and I see one of them get kicked on the groin, and it's like, ooh. And one of them got kicked in the mouth. It's like, ooh, this, I could do without that. Doesn't look like fun. So my journey continues. I go to Howard University, and I would see these guys running around campus in their dobok or gis, okay, barefoot, running around campus. I mean, in single file, because the teachers, he called himself Seafood. And they're running around campus and look, saying, well, that's still not for me, And this guy who was teaching them, he had a requirement. Wherever I see you, you are to drop and do 10 knuckle push-ups. So if he saw you in the store, saw you on the sidewalk, saw you at a party, you're to drop and give him 10 knuckle push-ups. And I'm still saying, not for me, So as it turns out, a friend of mine, we were roommates at the time. His name was Herman Russell. Herman Russell from Chicago on the South Side. So we were roommates as far as an apartment. Back then you end up sharing an apartment with more than one roommate. So it's four of us sharing an apartment. And he had already joined the Taekwondo club. He had joined the club and he was competing. And he said, "Hey, Holloway, how about you join the club?" So I said, I don't know. But he started showing me a few things, showing me a few kicks or whatever. And so I decided, okay, I'll take the class, because you have to take the class, the 1 credit phys ed class, in order to join the club. So I did that. And then I joined the club. And on the first day, I went and I looked in the room where Taekwondo took place, and it was crazy, from my point of view. And it was like, woo, I don't know. And then I remember when I did join the club, I went there the first day, there was 66 people in there. And then come the end of October, early November, it dwindled down to 35. Because Dr. Dong Young, he was the instructor there at Howard University, and he just weaned them out. Whoever wasn't serious and didn't want to really be serious about it, there's no room for you. So that's how the story begins. And I figured, well, I'll do Taekwondo. Got to have fun. But I said, going to black belt, nah. Black belt was not that was too much. If I get to brown belt, that's what we used at that time, brown belt. If I get to brown belt, that's cool. Somebody would ask you, "Oh, you're doing Taekwondo, you're doing karate?" "Yeah." "And you're brown belt?" "Yeah, I'm brown belt." That's almost a black belt, but black belt was just too much. So that's where the journey really began.
Well, that's an amazing old school story, and it's not dissimilar than a lot of our journeys. And I mean, but for you, obviously, it didn't stop there. You went on to compete in dual world championships, and you hold the distinction of being the first, and I believe only American, to medal both in the ITF and WTF World Championships. Can you share some of your experience in competing in these different styles of Taekwondo? And if so, how did you adapt your skills and strategy to be successful in both?
Well, when we started off, the only thing that I knew was ITF. That's what was being taught. Okay, my instructor, he was ITF. And we were AAU Taekwondo Committee. And then my first plane ride was going to the nationals, to the team trials for that championship. Got on the plane for the first time. So we go, and then we end up in Canada in 1974 for the first ITF World Championships. And I was fortunate to win the heavyweight title. They had it broken down to dans as far as if you're first, second degree, or first, second, third degree, and then it was fourth degree, fifth degree. So there was the back fist, as you know, June Reed, with the safety kick, safety punch. You could back fist, ridge hand to the head, you could kick, but the back fist in the ITF competition, you could only come within a centimeter. You could hit, but don't touch, and you could score, hit to the body, and you wore no gear, no headgear, no chest guard, no shin pads, nothing, no gloves, no arm pads. So it was rock'em sock'em, okay. And when I first started, actually, I learned, I was gung ho. So after my phys ed course, it had the summertime, and I was going to go and sign up to be in the club. And so I was looking through the phone book, through the yellow pages, to see where can I go and practice for the summer. And I saw June Reed, so I called them up, except that was too much money. Okay. And then I saw the 12th Street Y, and that was Kiwon Kim, which I didn't know who they were, but come to find out, the legends, Mike Warren and Albert Cheeks. So I went there and stayed there for the summer and continued on as far as going ITF. So that's what we did as far as ITF. And so I go to ITF competition, and it was fine. That's all I knew. Then we switched. My instructor, he switched because they were making a bid to become the national governing body for taekwondo in the US for the Olympics. So in order to do that, you could no longer be AAU. So the organization stepped out and became the US Taekwondo Union. And so then it's a different style of sparring. It's the body. So you wore a chest guard. But back then, all we wore was a chest guard and a cup. And so then it was what they call trembling shock. And so you would kick as hard as you can. And you know that. You've done that. You kick as hard as you can and you score your points. And you can kick to the head and knock them out, but no punching to the face, no punching to the head. Okay. And so basically, it was just this is what you have to do. You know, you have a transition. It's not like, well, you can't punch to the face. You know, and after I would train people and they say, well, I can't kick to the head. You can kick to the head. You can't punch in the head. Okay. And you go to a tournament and they have punching to the face. Okay. And so, well, wherever you go, you find out what the rules are. If they say you can kick to the groin, then you kick to the groin. If they say you can't kick to the face, you can't kick to the face. So you just adapt. That's the bottom line. You have to be ready to adapt to your situation. And so that's what I did. I adapted to that situation and ended up going to Korea for my first international event, which was, well, the second World Taekwondo Championships, okay, where I was an alternate. I lost to Jerry Robbins in the first national USTU nationals at Yale University. But like I said, it's just a matter of adapting to your situation. And I was able to do that. And that's, if you want to play, you have to adapt.
And you've always been good at that. I mean, in other areas, which we'll get into as well. And you served as a beacon and certainly a mentor for me. And I learned the history of the sport. And what I didn't know, which I just found out now, is that you had trained with those great legacies of Master Kiwan Kim and his group out of DC area. But it went on to you. I mean, you must have had some amazing leadership style because you ended up leading the U.S. team. You were one of the first captains, and I know we created the Captains Club, of which a number of our friends, we get together when we can and we talk about it. But what was your leadership style like, and what were some of your most memorable moments from being team captain?
Well, being team captain is, well, you have to set the pace. In other words, you have to be willing, can't talk, just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And that's basically, I found my job to be, you know, if you're going to talk it, you got to walk it. And regardless of what it may be, because your team is looking at you, looking for you to represent them. And one of those memorable moments, we're in Germany at the fourth World Championships, and we're in the gymnasium or the venue, and Coach Sang Lee, he had us go out on the floor and practice and show, basically, let's show your stuff. And the team members saying, we don't want to do that. We don't want to go out there and show our stuff. Okay. And so you have to go and tell them that we don't want that. You go and tell Grandmaster Coach Sang Lee, we don't want to do that. So me as a captain said, okay, I had to do that because this is what they expected of me. So I went and I told them that, you know, we don't want to do this. Okay, the team members don't want to do it. And can we be excused from going out there and displaying our stuff in front of whoever may be in the venue? And he said, I think this way best. And you know, it's like, no, go back and you're going to do what I say. And I said, yes, sir. Okay. And that's how it worked. You know, I would go to him and talk to him, but he had the final word, but I wanted them to know I would not let them down or him and haw and say, well, no, I can't do that.
That's a great captain. That's a great captain story. And having been a captain myself and having to have those conversations where we stand up for what we think our team needs or what should be said has always been challenging and difficult, especially in our organization. And, you know, I had the good fortune of being coached by Coach Sang Lee and others. And had that same situation and that probably had the same outcome. So that's the burden of being a captain, and it's the burden of being a leader. But at least we give it our best shot. But I want to transition now because you're one of the few individuals, I mean, has literally been here from the beginning, and then you've transitioned. We're going to get to this, but you've transitioned pretty much to every aspect of our sport. And I want to talk about the one that I interacted with you in most, and that's when you were a referee. I mean, what motivated you to transition from being a competitor to officiating? And was it a natural progression, or did some specific event inspire that change?
Well, for me, after I was no longer competing, say, okay, I'm going to retire from competition. And at the time, um, my wife, Deborah Holloway, who had made it to the Olympic team, she was pregnant. And so I was going to retire. And I remember Dr. Young saying to me, this is 1979, he's saying, John, you want to try one more time? And I said, okay. So I did it one more time. And then after that, I wanted to basically help as far as the competition, help the athletes, because I needed help when I was there in regard to being a referee, because referees didn't have a good reputation, okay? And athletes, they would whine, understandably so, because they got ripped off. Okay, somebody didn't score properly, they call and not making the right call. So therefore, I figured, well, I know what that feels like. It's happened to me. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to referee so that when the two players come out, they don't have to worry about the referee. They have to worry about each other. And so that's what started my journey as far as being a referee. And one match at the Nationals, this is in Berkeley, and a good friend of mine, Michael Malley, he was competing and I was refereeing his match. Okay. And I was calling what I saw. Okay. And it wasn't good for him. And so I remember we get into the third round and I'm saying, well, I hope he does something, because basically what's going on is that he's going to end up losing because I'm not going to make a bad call so that he can win. So fortunately, he did follow through and he was able to win that. But the one thing that I did feel or notice is that it's like with your kids. When they're doing something, you want them to be, you're harder on them. It's like teaching now. I have the kids in here and I say, okay, oh, you can do that, do it a little bit better. Just do that, as opposed to, no, don't do, you do that. My kids, I want them to be better. And so I'm harder on them, as opposed to other kids, you're not as hard. And then once you feel as though, yes, these are my kids too, then you become harder because they established a relationship with you. So that's what happened there. So being a referee and having the skills, the practice, and Dr. Young, he was the referee person. He set up the rules for the US. Okay. And we had our first referee seminar, national referee seminar out in Berkeley, okay, at the Nationals, and that's where it all started. So I learned from him, and he was the best. He was the best at that time. So I did it, and I had fun doing it and going out there in the center, okay. It was the next best thing to being there competing. I got the best seat in the house right there.
I've heard you say that often, and you've refereed a ton of my matches and always had been fair. And I'm not going to say you were harder on me than others, but you were. I can remember a number of incidences where you helped me understand that you weren't going to favor anyone, including me. And in one particular situation, I had hit my opponent, and then I turned my back to go back to the line, and you hadn't called stop, and the guy kicked me in the back of the head, and you said, I told you, you know, I didn't say stop, put your hands up. So I was like, oh, all right, well, that's the way it's going to go. But, and I always respected that about you. And I have a number of other stories where you kept me in the gym sane when there were times when things happened that I didn't think were fair. And I've watched you protect the rights of the athletes and the competitors, especially when it was unfair. And I'm not going to share those stories here, but I've always respected that of you. But I want to talk now about your prestigious S-class refereeing for international referee status, and you played a significant role in USA Taekwondo's as a co-chair of the referee and referee director. Can you tell us about any of the challenges or the rewards of officiating at such a high level?
Well, each time you go to an international event, they have referee training, you know, for a few days, and then they have the event. And the one thing that I did every time I went, I would raise my hand and say, "Do punches score?" or "Punches a point?" And they would say, "Yes, it's right there in the book. You know, you punch, that would be 1 point." Except back then, initially when I started refereeing international events, it was an unwritten rule, you don't score punches. But it says punches, and I would raise it every time. Every time went to an event, raise my hand and say, "Do punches score?" And they say yes. And so, and now finally, yes, you can score with punches. You can score with punches. That's the one thing that, yes, I think that I did have a little bit of something to do with that, because I kept on. You know, if it's something that needs to be done, you have to stick with it. You have to stick with it. And as far as on an international level, it was just fun. It was fun. Okay. And when the players see that, okay, you're doing it correct, they're doing it fair, then they know that, well, if they lose, they lose. They win, and it's no problem. Just go back home and do a little bit better. Okay, train a little bit harder so that you can come back and you can win this time.
We talked about the punching. You led that drive, and then we all, as we spent time in different positions, I would raise it at the referee meetings and ask the same question. And then I finally said, this is when I was helping the WT. I said, you know, what you're saying is you never score punches. So what you're saying is that the strongest, biggest, most feared Taekwondo competitor in the world doesn't have enough power or technique to score a punch. So you're killing yourselves. But the good news is they're scoring punches. But it leads me to my next question, which I believe it's for the first time in history, certainly in the history of the Olympic Games, that the USA has not been selected to have any referees at all participate at the Olympic Games in the upcoming 2024 games. And I mean, that's both the Olympics themselves and then the Paralympic Games. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you tell me what your thoughts are on this and what the cause might be, or even what the solution might be?
Well, when I initially I found out that we had two referees in the finals, okay, as far as the selection, and neither one was selected. And I thought that's unheard of. And then we get to Karugi, to the sparring, and we had two referees there, and neither one of them were selected. You know, it's always been, as far as our referees that went to the Olympics, there were two from the country, but only one gets to go. Okay. So if they select one, the other one missed out. That's what happened to me. But you know, someone from the US went. Okay. And now this time around, and I think it's a travesty that we don't have anyone in the Olympics. How's the United States not going to have an Olympic referee? Especially when the Olympics are going to be showing up in LA in a couple years, okay, at the next Olympics. And this is a celebration of the 100 Olympics. It doesn't seem right. And so basically, what's the solution? I don't have the solution, but we're investigating, and we're going to raise hell as far as making sure that someone knows, and we want to know why. We want to know why there's no referee at the Olympics for the US. And our referees are at the top. They're at the top. So if you're saying that, well, they aren't that good, well, something you have to show me and tell me who those are that are better. So
And
we'll go ahead.
this raises the next question because um, having been a member of various organizations, including the U.S. Olympic Committee and international relations, there was a huge effort on behalf of the U.S. Olympic Committee to create sport diplomacy so that individual national governing bodies would wield power, not undue power, but certainly be recognized for the size country of 340 million people we have. And we have the most amount of Kukiwan black belts in the world. I think even we promote more, maybe not as many as Korea, but I think close to, and higher ranks and grandmasters, and certainly competitors who are competing, and we've done our time. So it really begs the question: can we do a better job of sport diplomacy so that to say it plainly, when Professor Young from Howard University or Sang Lee or those people led the organization, we had diplomatic power. We were invited. We had a seat at the table, and we mattered. And people wouldn't consider to do something like this. So
Correct.
are we missing something in a sport diplomacy sense?
I think so. I think so. And I
Mm,
think that we have to rebuild. We have to let folks know that, yes, we have earned and we deserve a seat at the table. And when you're saying now you're not going to sit this time, and I want to know why. Because we're coming to demand our seat at the table.
I understand, sir. Well, I don't want to belabor that. I just want to make sure that, I support you in that effort. And I think that those questions have to be asked and answered. But I want to get on to some more positive stuff. You were team leader for the Pan Am Games and the Olympic Games. And I had the good fortune of being in that organization at that point in different ways. And I was at the USOC table as the head athlete liaison, where you were team leader. But leading the team for such a high profile event is a huge responsibility. And what was your approach to the coaching and the preparing the team and the leaders for these international competitions? And did
Well,
your experience as a competitor referee inform your coaching style?
yes, because making sure that our athletes were safe, number one, okay? Because for those that were going, it was the first time, okay? First time going, and they were young, and there was at that time, um, you never know what's going on. In other words, we would get up and we go to our training center where taekwondo took place, weight training and other sports, and we had an armed security person that walked with us. And it's like, well, things are kind of tense, okay, when you have to have that. So that means that, well, we're in Australia, we're in Sydney, and everyone wants to have fun at the same time because we went early and we stayed to the very end. We were there for the opening ceremony and we were there for the closing ceremony. But we have to stay on track as far as what we're doing there. What was the job there is to win. Because when you go there, the USOC would ask me as a team leader, how many gold medals? And I said, well, we have 4 athletes. I said 2. Okay. We got 1. Okay. And that first day when we lost, I could see how not winning can be very, very, very depressing. I mean, I didn't want to come out of my room, okay, or go over to the house, to the office where there's mail and you pick up certain things. And it's like I didn't want to show my face. And I wasn't the one competing, but I was the leader. And so, therefore, how they felt, this is how I felt, okay. We did win a gold medal, and that, you know, made me stand up again. I was glad to go into the office Say, yeah, so congratulations, you got a medal, gold medal. Yes, we did. But and to make sure that my players were safe, that they were safe. And so I had the young ladies, they would go out, they've competed and now they want to have fun. I said, well, I can't stop you from going out. Well, I could, but I would not. That would not be, they'd sneak out, I'm sure. But I said, you call me every hour. So they had to call me every hour, and they did. They will call every hour on the hour to say that I'm okay. We had relationships with all the different countries and the school kids and the people that are there, as far as going downtown, going and just hanging out, experiencing the Olympic experience. And for me, that was my first time, okay, and at the Pan Am Games, which is basically a prerequisite as far as being a leader for the Olympics. It says, okay, this is it. This is on the Pan Am level, but now it's going to be even bigger next year when you go to the Olympics. And so that's that. And at the same time, having a relationship with those players so that they know what's going on and they're going to listen to you. So that's how I looked at it. And I'm gonna say it was enjoyable, a lot of fun, a lot of work, and you represent yourself, your art, your family, your country, and you do your best.
Well, you were well respected by the Olympic organization, and I remember Sandy and Marty McNamara really taking to you and liking your leadership style, which was different from the past and some of the team leaders that I had experienced and they had experienced. But I'm gonna transition now to you've done 4 decades of ownership and leadership at Channel East Taekwondo. And it's just a remarkable achievement that you do this passion, your avocation. I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy of running a successful organization or school and how has Gentle East evolved over the years to stay relevant and meet its needs of its students.
Mhm. Well, for me, to even did ever think that I would even, like I said, didn't want to do Taekwondo, karate. And to say now that's my passion, that's my job, that's my life. And when I started Taekwondo, like I said, I didn't think I would get the black belt. Didn't want to go to black belt. That's just too much. So as far as being able to open up a school, I went to college, went to Howard University, and I knew that I could go to college, I could graduate, and I can get a job. Okay. But what is that going to do as far as having that fulfillment? No one in my family had ever gone to college. So there was no one to say, hey, this is what you can do. This is what you need to do. This is what's going to happen. I just went and I found out. Okay. So in finding that out, I said, okay, well, what was I going to do to start with? Well, go here and I'll do some politics, find out how the government's run. I can be a doctor, I'll be a lawyer, and I changed my major several times from business to politics to political science to Afro American studies, back to business, and finally graduated. And I was working at the phone company. I worked there for 10 years. 10 years. And at the same time, I had started a small club where I had rented space from a dance studio 3 times a week. And then I would go from DC to Virginia to Maryland every day, every day, every day. And then I got to the point where I'm going to cut one of these out, which was going working at the phone company. And I started Gen Lee's, and I had a lot of support from the students that I had from the little small club that I had, about 20 kids, 20 students. And we opened up, and from there, things were good, things were not so good. And as far as trying to keep it, trying to have an impression upon the kids that came, even the adults. You know, there's a philosophy that myself and very good friend of mine who did taekwondo, he was my senior, Howard Davis, we would say taekwondo's for everyone, but everyone's not for taekwondo. So so I started, and then I would do it, and some things I found out were difficult, and those things I made sure I had support. And then over the years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and now it's at number 44. 44 years, 42 years as far as being in the same location, and all the things that I've learned just being there. And then we had COVID. COVID just wiped me out. It was like, people talking about the schools closing. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. And I survived, but all the students that I had, except two, returned. So it was starting over. And so now we started over, and it's even bigger and better than it was before. What has changed is that the market is kids as opposed to the adults. So a bunch of kids, and trying to make sure that they stay on the right path, because there's so much out here that can take them the wrong way, and you want to make sure that they stay on the right path. And that's the challenge, because the parents will, and it's old things that are old school are good. Okay. Everything that we say, okay, well, old school's better, some things are, and some things may not be, because we have a transition as far as how things happen. I don't tell the kids, okay, well, go sit in the corner, you know, have a timeout, no. No, it's a little more engaged in that. So doing what I'm doing, and someone said, well, how long are you going to do it? Are you going to retire? I am retired, but I'm still teaching. How long are you going to do that? Well, until it's no more fun. When it's no more fun, I will close up or pass it on. There's no need for me to be involved, but we have a energy that's there, that'll always be there. And that's what we have now. So when I'm no longer able or wanting to, not having fun, then it's time to move on. So I'm going to go to Paris and watch the games, which will be pretty interesting. We have one player, he got big expectations. We have the other two females and another male that hopefully they'll be able to do well also.
The Olympics is what the Olympics is, and so great performances come that maybe wouldn't have come, and so I'm hopeful that the U.S. will do well and the players will do well, because I wish them all well, as I know you do.
Yes.
The experience of being at the Olympics brings out the best in us, and it makes us reach for things. You gave me the biggest and best piece of advice in Barcelona, and you said, just go have fun. This is your last event. You're going to retire. Just go have fun, and it will work out. And it did for me. And so I hope you pass that advice on to the athletes, and CJ for sure, because I know people are expecting great things from him, and Healy, and the young ladies that are competing. Just I wish them the best, and I know you do as well. But I want to talk about your Hall of Fame induction, and I know that another one of my seniors from back east, Joe Robbins, is the administrator of it, and he and others recognized you as a contributor, and you were inducted in 2007. And it was really an honor, I think, to be recognized, because I think you should have been recognized by others in other things. what does the recognition mean to you? What did this mean to you?
It's just being acknowledged that yes, you put your foot forward and you put your energy and time into something that you love, and someone says, I acknowledge that. I see it too. And as a matter of fact, we want others to see it. And so for me, it was fine. I didn't think as far as, well, I'm being inducted, but who cares? I care, but who wants to come to this event? You know, so it wasn't advertising as far as saying, okay, I'm going into the Hall of Fame. So how about coming and see this? You know, it was just a personal achievement that, you know, I enjoy, you know, and then we have the Grandmaster Society being inducted there. But one of the biggest ones that I really cherish is from Howard University. We have um, in 22 they have Hall of Fame, and we have all the different sports, and so I was inducted there, and so that one is close to my heart because that's where I spent bunch of time as far as being a part of the Howard University team and with Dr. Young, and so that one, and he showed up. I was glad that he came. Okay, and another Olympian who came there was Sharon Jewell, and my daughters, they came. So that was good. That was good. But what's going to be your legacy? What are you going to do? Then it's like something that, well, you got the trophies, you got the things that, you know, you can look at and can say, wow. But what do you pass on to these other folks? And for me, it's these kids that I have in here. I pass on to them, and they'll come and they say, "Oh, wow!" And it's like, and I tell the kids in class, and I say, "You're going to be running the show." Saying, "Okay, you're going to grow up and you're going to be running the show." So that's why I teach you, and this is why you have to listen to your teachers and listen to your parents and do your best, so that when you don't feel like doing your best, then it'll still come out because you're used to doing that, because you're going to be running the show, and they don't understand that now, maybe 10 years, 20 years, and say, oh, that's what he was talking about. Because I'm the boss in this. I'm making sure that I'm contributing to the world, to my country, to my family. And it's fun.
And I think that's, that leads me into my next question, and my wrap up is, um, I think one of the things that, and I said this to, ironically, to Chuck Norris. I had the honor of working with him in some things at Century, and I knew his history because I'm a history buff of the martial arts, and whether it was USA Taekwondo or movies. And what people didn't know about him was the various things he had done. He was the original Rambo. He was the original. He fought. He was a competitor. He was the power gym guy. He was Texas Walker Ranger and all the philanthropy and kick drugs out of America. I said, and most people don't know that about you. And with you, I'm not sure that people are the student of history that they should be. I was, and I was fortunate. I came at a time where you were just um, in integrating yourself into the political framework of the USA Taekwondo movement and the international movement, and then certainly the highest levels. And there's only a handful of people that have done that. For you, with your wealth of experience, what are your thoughts on the future of Taekwondo? And what are some of its biggest
Mm.
opportunities and challenges facing the sport?
Evolution, evolution, because things are changing. And as you know, as far as the type of sparring that we do, you know, old school players say, well, you know, this is what we did. Okay. And it worked. Now, will old school players come out now and spar with the transitional folks and say, this works? It can. Okay. But it's the times. We have to adjust to the times, and the times are important. Okay, for taekwondo, it's not it's not at the level in which we have action. Okay, people watch MMA because basically they want to see the blood. Okay, but when they're just on the ground and they're just laying there and nothing's going on, folks don't like that. Okay, with taekwondo, they want you to see the kicks. They want to see you fly. They want to see you do your best. Okay, that's why they change when we had 3-minute rounds for sparring. We had 3-minute rounds for competition. Then now in 3 minutes for men, 2 minutes for women. But we changed it to 2 minutes for men, and it's still 2 minutes for women. But even though we changed it to 2 minutes, we can take a minute out of that and we'll still have 1 minute of action. And I think that's not something that you want to watch the Olympics and see. You want the 2 minutes. Now we have CJ, he'll give you 2 minutes each round. Okay. The ladies, they can give you 2 minutes each round. Okay. So that's what we have, that they change the rules, okay, to make it so that you have to do certain things. Me, one rule that I see, and that's the pushing, the grabbing, the clenching. And I think that somewhere along the line, you should be able to only put your hands in front to touch the other player. You can't clench. You cannot clench. And if they do that, then you'll have more action, because basically if your hand's on my chest, my hand's on your chest, that means somebody has to do something. But if we kick and we just hug, okay, and they say, well, we'll give you 2 seconds to come out of the hug. No, don't give them any time. Don't let them hug, period. So we have rules that are, they're changing, okay, just like the punch. It took it a while, a long while, to say, okay, yes, that punch will score, okay. And I remember when I was competing, this is before falling down. And they said, if you fall down for any reason, you're going to get a warning. And I remember at Howard University, I'm competing. It's a championship match. And the guy comes out and he liked to jump up in the air. And it's like, okay, he's going to jump up in the air and I'm just going to move in and bump. And he's going to fall down. He's going to get a warning. He does that, and I'll keep doing it. Because my thing is, well, whatever the rules are, you have to know what the rules are, and you play by those rules, and you use those rules to your advantage. And that's one asset that I had when I was competing. Okay, they said you can't go out of bounds, and I make sure you go out of bounds. If you said you can't fall, I make sure you fall. Okay, if they say, well, you can't clinch, I'll make sure you go in and you start hugging me, holding me. So, but we have to, it's like, who's making all the changes? Who's making all the changes? It's like when we have referees, we have rules. What referees do you contact, or do you talk to? Or do you say, well, what's your input? It's the same people that is doing the same thoughts, as opposed to let's have some matches and let's see what's going to be working. Okay. So that's where I stand.
Well, you said something that so the creator of the pushing grabbing rule was Yang Jin Ban, and it was a personal mission of his to do that because I had talked to him 30, 40 years ago when he thought that was a solution, and I disagreed, and Dr. Stephen Capner and I had long conversations with him. So his dream has come to fruition because he's president of the KTA, and KTA is the tail that wags the dog of the WT. And so that's why we have the problem we have with the pushing and the shoving and the lack of whatever. But you said something that is important to say as well. Don't blame the athletes. The athletes are going to do what was necessary and is necessary to win. And when I was an athlete, I was the most boring fighter in the world, with the exception of when I hit people. But I just did what I needed to do to win. And arguably others made better evolutions from that. But there were people that won Olympic games simply by pushing people. out of
Mm-hmm.
bounds, didn't score a single point. So there needs to be a righting of the ship, if you will, and getting it back on course. And you did say something, which I don't want to harp on, but you did say something which is absolutely true. Who is controlling and making these rules? And I know who's controlling and making the rules because I was in the room when we changed the point system, and who was at the table and who fought the rule changes. So the multi-point system was created in part when I was on the technical committee, and it was Dr. Cape and myself and a couple of referees in the room. And then the electronics messed it up. So it will change and evolve, and with your help. And that's why I asked you that question, because it would seem that the natural evolution for you, since you've done time inside the local organization, then the NGB, and then certainly in the USOC, and as team leader, it would seem that the next evolution for you would be at the WT level. And so, do you have any thoughts on that at all, as to whether that's something you would want to do or have an interest in?
Yes, but it's a but. I would not. I'm not going want to go there and sit and just not say anything, and just go along with the flow. Because basically, yes, we have lots of folks there who've been there and they've been flowing the same way, the same time, all these years, as opposed to, well, this is what we need to do. We have to change. We have to change and we have to move forward. Okay. And that's where, old school versus new. And we have old school folks that are in there that are not letting themselves learn new tricks. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
And I mean, I had the shortest tenure ever of being on the chair of the education committee and vice chair of the technical committee, because I went in and said what was necessary. So I was there for 2 years
Right.
or so, and I was okay with that because that's the nature of what we should do. And I take my leadership, mentorship from you. But before we go, I just wanted to say thank you for this, because I think that people need to understand the legacy of you, what you've done for us, and certainly for me. And I didn't speak about um, anything that you did for me, and people don't. It's not. It doesn't need to be public. But over the years, you have done everything from helped me, mentored me, given me advice. When I got in trouble, helped me get out of trouble. When I was going to get in trouble, warned me I was going to get in trouble, and I might still get in trouble. But I need to say publicly thank you to you for doing what you did. Not for me, because for me, I'm just one individual of many that you've helped throughout the years, but more importantly for what you do for us as a role model inside our sport, because you were the one beacon of hope that showed us that it wouldn't be business as usual, and that you could, if you were diligent and willing to stay in the room long enough, make a
Right.
difference and change. And I think that's the message I would hope people hear from this podcast. You as an individual, your commitment to your community, you as an individual, your commitment to our sport. I mean, and to be honest, you as an individual being willing to referee, because we need more great competitors that make that transition
Yes.
so they can do what you did, which was make sure that it was fair. And that was something that affected me personally over the years and helped me, because I knew there would be somebody in the room that could do it, and make sure referees were kept accountable. Our work together, along with Leon Preston and the original referee development program, still resonates inside the organization. So I'm hopeful that you continue to do that. But if I just wanted to give you an opportunity, if there's anything else that I may have missed, I tried to be complete before we say goodbye. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we take off?
It's all good.
And now those are always my favorite words that I remember, and I hope you keep that up. Well, Grandmaster Holloway, on behalf of our leadership and on behalf of our listenership and just Taekwondo in general, I want to thank you for your time today.
You're
And as
welcome.
always, mad love and mad respect, sir. And I hope to see you soon.
Okay, good enough. Peace
Thank you, sir.
out.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
Well, there you have it. What an amazing conversation. And I even learned a few things that I didn't know about my senior. This is a man who is passionate about martial arts, life, but more importantly, the way that he approaches it. With dignity, with fairness, and with action. He took the time to learn and grow and stay in the room when others left. And he left a legacy and continues to do so in his community, in the country, and on the world stage. We can only hope that he'll take that and expand it into the WT and create change where change is needed most. But more importantly, I hope he shares his wisdom with all the generations of athletes, but especially the ones preparing for 2024. And in the words of Grandmaster Holloway, it's all good. Have a great time, and I look forward to seeing you on our next Masters Alliance Uncut. This is Herb Perez.